Never thought I'd see the day. Know this, Your Grace. Black Cloud. My. We've gathered done. Know this, Your Grace.
Rivia. And here...
Niamh needed but set one foot. What had caused this murder to amass? Well, Niamh's scouts soon found out. Hearing this, the Queen ordered a halt to their march. They would go no further, she thought, till they knew what...
Whole camp! Blackclads and loggers alike! Done in one night. No...
Niamh stood at the edge of the clearing and pricked her ears. The rule...
Thank you! Them blackclads don't understand the forest. Don't understand nature. They rape it. Try to take too much, too fast.
Attacked from all sides, the monster teetered and swayed, fighting off their blows with ever greater difficulty. Finally, it fell to the ground and fell...
We return to the road.
Niamh said, crushing the beast's deer-like skull under her heel.
Ah, and Reynard, I've a request.
Yes, Your Grace?
Once we regain the realm and return to the capital,
Neve arrived at the walls of Gradobor, famed for fine rugs and woven tapestries. The city, so vast was the banner, Gascon whistled in admiration.
Gotta admit, the Blackclads certainly have panache.
And a vast and powerful army, I'd remind you.
Reynard interjected.
Arbalists line the walls.
No cost is too high.
Said Neve, a hardness in her voice.
Reynard, Gascon, ready our men to attack.
The Lyrians needed... The battle for Gradobor was a hard fight, though not quite as hard as most had thought. As fighting died down around the city, Neve rode for the town hall. The Lyrians were victorious, though not without aid. Neve met with the merchants who had roused the townsfolk. The merchants exchanged glances, nodded, grunted, agreed with each other without uttering a word. Then one, a clothfuller, his moustache most robust, stepped forward.
I agree. Non-humans must know their place.
Began the Queen.
So listen closely, all. Whether elf, dwarf, gnome, or human...
The tradesman huffed, the tradesman puffed. Neve silenced them with a firm swipe of her hand. Come nightfall, the Lyrians pitched camp. Neve sat down and stared into the fire. Her officers, advisors, kept their distance, unsure if her eyes burned with the fire's reflection or a fury deep inside. Gabor stood and went back to the mess tent.
Well, our very own queen on the dwarf elder's leash. Why am I not surprised? Dwarves don't let humans into Mahakam. Well, dwarves don't... Ha! 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 Beautifully knocked those racist knoblickers down a peg! Here, here, dear queen! Ha! 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 Beaut...
The Devil's Tower.
The Queen had chosen to meet Willem at Devil's Tower, and not without purpose. The structure stood...
No escorts were your terms.
Began Gascon, with a hint of mischief.
But better safe than sorry, I always say.
What are you suggesting?
Yours truly and 4 chaps behind the...
Willem arrived soon after. The heavily armored cavalry he had in tow clearly there to boost his courage. Willem and the mother who'd borne him stood face to face.
Time flies, and I've a kingdom to liberate.
I thought my messenger already did.
Oh, he did. Only, Willem I is in no position to parley on an equal footing. Willem I can't...
Yes, Mother, I am. And I see that by losing I've at last made you content.
Willem, we do not meet as mother and son. We meet only as leaders of 2 armies at war.
Can you separate the two?
I must. If only not to lose my mind.
I see. I'm losing, you say. And you're right. I am ready, however, to renounce my fealty to the Empire and pledge my forces to you.
Mm-hmm.
First, you will not rescind the reforms I've authorized already, any of them. Second, you will guarantee both my sake. Third, I shall remain your heir.
Impudent child.
Well, I had to try. Goodbye, Mother.
Hold. You're impertinent, Willem. As you should be. I'm not done. You shall remove crown and royal cloak. You shall...
Yes.
It's settled, then.
Willem bowed, turned, and walked away. Soon thereafter, Neve's arm...
How do you fare, my son?
I certainly, but they've no wish to speak.
Well, so...
Yes?
General at Dahi.
Actually, Mother.
Truly?
Mm-hmm.
I'll take that as a compliment.
Contempt. He behaves as though he sees all the North he treats as a...
I saw this in Edirne.
Mother, I know Nilfgaard has not defeated you in battle, but I beg you, don't...
Your reforms? Tell me about them.
Mother, if you wish, I shall tell you of my decrees, gladly so.
You're right, Willem.
I began by clarifying key aspects of the rights...
Neve listened intently and with rising interest. With her sons
And thence my decision to revoke... You stand quite...
There are few things We'll go over it all again, Willem, in detail. I wanted to thank you for your courage in believing...
Mother...
If we hadn't...
Then don't. Please.
We shall...
Oh, yeah.
Your Grace,
said Reynard, saluting and clicking his heels.
Peasants from the sky.
The band of commoners was led by a sturdily built beekeeper dubbed Ethelred, son of the...
What? Your decree? One they nailed to our notice board?
The peasant said, sheepishly pulling out. Neve and Reynard exchanged astonished glances. They had issued no such decree. Yet the document bore her signature. The Queen tore the falsified
Oi, Meavy!
cried Gascon, as usual paying no heed to courtly etiquette.
Come here a minute.
Would it hurt so terribly to occasionally address me by Your Grace or Your Majesty?
Didn't want to be petty, but since you bring it up, you've never once addressed me as the... My lads jumped one of the Blackclads' transports. Guess what they were hauling?
Gascon handed. Her soldiers returned a few hours later with good...
Time for the Nilfgaardians to publish a retraction.
The Nilfgaardians fought fiercely, led by a seasoned covert agent. Seeing he would soon fall into an... Niamh picked up a freshly printed pamphlet. The document listed her many crimes and misdeeds, the true and the manufactured alike.
Yes, these presses should be put to good use.
The Queen said.
But printing lewd jests is not it. We must spread facts. Tell...
Soon, in every town, village and tavern, there hung a notice detailing Nilfgaard's crimes.
Nilfgaard left none of... Peasants from... Emperor Emir... Peasants from it.
Will...
Nilfgaard will not spit in our maws! Lady, the traitors from before you. Find... Nilf...
The traitorous Caldwell family's residence loomed into view. Against the horizon, it looked suitably set. The great double doors opened with an echoing thud. Just inside them stood the heir to the estate, Dragomir, his wife and 3 children.
Your Grace, my father's betrayal stands beyond doubt and exoneration.
The young Caldwell said flawlessly, and in a single breath, as if he'd practiced a dozen times.
And his death at your hands was most well deserved. I beseech you to lay your trust in Prince Willem. He'll...
Meve narrowed her eyes and gazed at Dragomir. Large drops of sweat. In one swift motion, Meve snatched a crossbow from a soldier, put it to her cheek, and loosed.
I shall replace the glazing in the windows to bear Rivi. My father was wrong. I shan't let you down. Again, many thanks. I shall replace the...
Oh yeah!
Meve now reached Willowhain, a settlement she knew well. Alas, it appeared the war had ravaged even these woods. A dismal scene. Her once cherished wood, and it weighed heavily on the Queen's spirits.
Give the order to attack, but none is to play the hero. We shall breach or topple the stockade.
When the battle dust had settled, Meve instructed her soldiers to gather Willowhain's inhabitants. Of a sudden, a villager dropped to his knees and raised his hands to the heavens in supplication. Meve broke off oddly, baffled by the man's outburst. Reynard managed to grasp the essence of the Nilfgaardian peasant's frantic. Meve had stopped listening. She turned to survey the hamlet.
那怎么办啊？
They can stay on 2 conditions. Tell them. For 15 years, they'll pay double the tax. And if any of the previous inhabitants return, they're to be given their...
Hail, Reina, Maeve! Here, Eagle-Wad! Cla... Esle... Maranta... Hail! Hail! Clar and Lydia and Rivia!
Let me tell you of Ravencloft, a quarry Meave passed by. A quarry with a dark history. For years, yet now, as she neared it, Meave could hear the even tap of pickaxes. She dispatched scouts to investigate. They returned promptly, their faces sullen, their cloaks blanched with a fine limestone dust.
Quarry's open anew, Your Grace.
The Queen then turned to Reynard, as ever at her side.
Reynard, what do you advise?
As a soldier, my Queen.
If I were to calculate in heart and mind, keep note of gains and losses,
Began Meave.
I'd been...
The Lyrians handily dispatched the Nilfgaardian overseers, more trained in the ways of the whip than the sword.
Your Grace, them black-clads treated us like dogs, stripped us of dignity.
You can fight for your homeland in more ways than one.
Urged the Queen.
Not just sword in hand. Return to your homes, your...
Meave spied the outline of Malabon Castle on the horizon, and turned dour. True, no golden suns waved atop its towers.
Perhaps the Oberts will lend us aid,
Reynard replied.
True, you've been at odds with them in the past. But perhaps now, faced with a common foe.
A common foe?
Snorted the Queen.
You mean Nilfgaard, to whom they opened their gates? The things I do for the good of my realm.
Meave sighed.
So be it. Reynard, send a runner to the castle.
What can I help you with, Meave?
The war, my dear. The one being fought outside the walls of your castle.
Greta smiled to herself, then intertwined her brittle, ring-covered fingers.
I'm afraid that's impossible.
It is a vassal's sacred duty to serve her liege, and
my...
Hearing his name, Willem stepped forward.
I wish to add my name to my mother's entreaty,
said the prince.
We tried to pact with the Empire. We trusted General Epdai's promises, and he broke them, one after the other.
Margravine Greta dropped.
Mine is long lost,
the noblewoman replied in a whisper.
I watched from my tower as their troops marched past. And
Meave left Malabon Castle, reinforced by the Oberts, and reassured...
We march with you. War. Prince Willem... Prince...
Meave's force reached Cavaldon, a small...
Cavaldon can be taken,
began Reynard hesitantly.
but not without losses. Considerable losses.
Our losses may be heavy,
said Meave, draw... The Nilfgaardians had indeed prepared well, with grapples to repel hook ladders from the walls and long spears to dozens of burghers stood before the tent. Between them and the Queen, a man knelt in shackles. His face was blooded as if he'd endured. Meave gripped the beaten man's beard, tugged upwards, and looked him in the eye.
Show him mercy, milady!
Cried a withered old man in a flour-spattered apron.
When it black-clad bastards captured my son!
The townsfolk began shouting over one another. Some told of the blacksmith's noble deeds. Others labelled him a traitor, deserving of a cruel and violent...
This man forged arms for the Nilfgaardians. 'Tis true,
said Meave to the crowd.
Yet you, Baker, baked the bread they ate. And you, Potter, stained the cups from which...
Upon hearing the verdict, the Queen's troops stared in disbelief, then began to boil. As she walked back...
If it weren't for you, your grace, they'd have torn me to bits with their bare hands,
he said, kneeling before her.
I thank you.
Freedom will cost... Freedom will...
How could you, your majesty? How could you, How could you, your
Your Majesty, the hut's untouched. Ripe grain in the fields, 'tis hard to believe. I feared we'd have another Eddern here, but the Blackclads setting fire to all.
I feared nothing of the sort. Nilfgaard's not stupid. Lands it aims to hold, it doesn't destroy. And Willem did...
Broadhead now loomed before Meve and her force. Once famous for its glowing forges, and when its black-clad garrison spotted the Lyrians approaching, they'd hastily fled, left the city.
What they've taken from my city,
Began the Queen.
they've taken from me. And I will have...
Meve personally, and none too gently, shackled the Nilfgaardian commander, a young nobleman with a precisely trimmed moustache. Any pride from the victory vanished in an instant, and Meve swelled with anger. Crumbling walls, shattered windows, rotted wood. Broadhead was bleak, a dull shadow of its former self. As the Lyrians entered, the somber townsfolk...
Folk of Broadhead, you're free at last.
Aye, and a new one starts now.
Are you madman? Don't you recognize our banners? The Lyrian army stuff.
Oh, I recognise banners. Servant, and then I came back to my own. All had gone to shite. On account of damn dwarves. Been flooding Rivia with their metal goods for years now. Us Smiths, don't you call yourselves the Lyrian army? Colours and banners confirm it. Well, what about you? And right behind, So what freedom's it you're giving a beg?
What do you want about, man?
There's no levy on goods from Mahakam. But without it, us workshops don't stand a chance. And ye, your grace...
The dwarves are faithful allies. They help us because...
Because they've got something to...
Enough. Silence.
Before Meve could leave the market...
Frank...
I'm perfectly aware...
I don't mean to toot my...
Do tell her.
Everything your folk make here, the dwarves of Mahakam make twice as far.
Your spec...
At the risk of being immodest, exactly. Besides,
I'll consider it, Barn.
The time came to leave Broadhead, so Meve summoned her advice. After careful deliberation, the Queen approved Barnabas's proposal. He would manage the city's ailing industry and seek to... At first, the Rivian townsfolk were skeptical of the Queen's decision, but Barnabas's scheme...
Now I'm no ally. Now I'm no...
The wind howls like a...
When Meve saw Reynard's usually stoic visage rent by a half-moon grin, she knew he brought particularly good news.
Your Grace, our toil has borne fruit. The liberated town...
The castle of Rivia now loomed before the Lyrians. Water surrounded it, foreign banners waved upon the walls. The golden sun and General Epdahi's crest.
Your Majesty,
began Reynard in a reassuring tone.
We needn't strike quickly. We've time on our side. To prepare would be wise.
These invaders have grown fond of Rivia Castle,
said Meave.
So let them stay and rot. Reynard.
Then, an emissary from the castle brought a message for the Queen. General Epdahi wished to meet, face to face, and half the way between the citadel and the Lyrian camp.
Well, well,
Meave proceeded to the meeting point without delay.
You came as I requested. Good.
I couldn't possibly refuse such a courteous invitation.
Your realm fell quickly. I expended little, but please, we must...
I see you've readily...
In point of fact, I've grown fond of the castle. Fortifications impressive.
Dry your eyes, General. Rest easy.
Remarkable. I've not been in the north long, but have discovered something all the same. You see, for every army you defeat, another will come to take its place. One larger and better equipped than the one before. Even now, as we so pleasantly chat, Army Group East is en route to lift your siege, due to arrive tomorrow.
Enough. I'll not be insulted, General, nor intimidated.
Then I wish you a split.
Indeed I will. For with raised
in my home, in the civilized world, a general...
You're not at home, General, but you're right. I will rest. While...
Without awaiting a response from General Epdahi.
As a rule, human fortifications aren't worth a pound of shale marshite. But this fort sure turned out all right. As a rule... Gonna be one hell of a night! Ah! 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 Don't you... My axe! My axe!
Let us hope this proves the war to end all wars. Always die. Many will die to...
Meave's closest advisors already awaited her in the...
An army, an immense one, approaches from the west.
Damn it! Why did not...
Our scouts were discovered.
Yes, it didn't seem right.
We must flee? Not at all.
Easily said, but for a problem. Our force is chiefly infantry.
What do you advise?
We've two options.
Out of the quest.
Or...
Suppose for a moment it's possible. Tell me how... I know we're at war and many die. But to...
Rivia's walls are unassailable. I fully agree.
I think I like what...
I know this citadel like no one else.
Wait. That narrowest of piers...
The same. As I'm sure you recall, a small detachment could approach unnoticed.
What then?
They would need to pass through the fort to the winch in the...
That is...
Perhaps.
And I'm to choose to send folk...
You needn't choose anyone, for I vote...
Bloody wretch.
And you've a bet...
Of course.
Beg your pardon?
Face it, Reynard, you couldn't sneak past a corpse. Sound like a... Apart from which, you...
Firstly, Reynard, I'm grateful.
Thank you,
But truth be told, I did indeed hear you walking to... And yes, you know Rivia Castle better than anyone else.
Understood you.
Cheers, me.
You won't, I'm sure. Godspeed you on your way, and...
Gascon hand-picked his men. Those most adept with daggers. Meave watched anxiously as the boats glided away.
Wait, you're serious? Ha! 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 Yeah! Ha! Ha! You see to the winch! Yeah! This must be it! Grab the winch! Open the gates!
The Lyrians prepared for battle, their silence absolute. Finally, a torch's faint glow. Moments later, Lyrians in the hundreds burst from the trees. Then they heard chains, grinding and clinking, and the sound sent shivers down their spines. Meve had begun the day known as a great warrior. Yet by night's end, what was this extraordinary vigor that surged through Meve? As she stepped through the door into the tower, the silence told Meve she'd arrived too late. Gascon's men lay slaughtered in pools of their own blood. The man himself slumped over the winch's crank.
Help's on the way. Don't you even think of dying.
You know...
Gascon, the queen, rose, her fists clenched, her shoulders rigid, her knuckles white. Her face... The Lyrians were at the brink, near their breaking point. They'd followed me for thousands of miles, over snow-clad... Nilfgaard had the upper hand, yet the black-clad spirits had suffered. They now made more use of shields than of... Alas, the general had disappeared. A prisoner revealed Epdahi had fled as soon as the Lyrians had surged towards the upper keep. Meve cursed her luck and leaned back against a merlin. Dawn was yet a few hours off. That night, the war turned, with the battle for The armies of the north had united and now seemed to be on the attack everywhere. Imperial forces, while still far more numerous, lay stretched over thousands of miles. Their position was untenable, and Nilfgaard's commanders knew this. In a decisive battle, they yet stood a chance, so they gave said battle, and suffered a resounding defeat. Just a few months on from that memorable night in Rivia, the Imperial army was in utter disarray. Aldersburg, the fortress, remained a last point of resistance. General Epdahi and what had survived of Army Group East had dug in there. This place, where Nilfgaard had triumphed grandly in the war's early days, would now bear witness to its impending defeat. It seems history, after all, has a sense of justice, or humor, or both. Though Meve had already reclaimed her realm, she refused to retire her sword just yet. For King Demavend had requested her aid in purging Edirn of the invader. How could she refuse? She owed the king a favor, firstly. Yet she also had a burning desire to settle the score with Epdahi.
Demavend's envoy and I spoke, Your Majesty. The king...
Good. I truly hate...
Of course, Your Grace.
Yes?
Pardon my boldness, Your Grace.
Perhaps I made a mistake.
He didn't, Your Majesty. I'm a soldier. I swore to serve you. Guilt, pity trouble you, Your Grace. I know. There's no greater proof of friendship.
You're right. We've talked enough.
Your Grace, if I may. Some of our comrades in arms would...
Huh?
The war nears its...
Stop.
Sadly.
I serve. Rebuild your land, Queen.
Arnulf.
What about after? I yearn to sit at their table last...
So long up.
I'm pleased to...
The war's near its end. Duty call. Of course.
Your Grace.
I showed mercy. You hurt me, Reynard.
As you would.
The war nears its end.
Whatever you... is something...
To be perfectly...
Your Grace.
No, I'd wish you to stay.
I do.
It's time I...
Always good to...
Our conversation in...
Of course. Clear it.
Well, we've won...
Feeling a wee bit...
Later, perhaps.
Ha! I was...
War's over, but we've much...
Meaning... You...
We haven't had a chance to speak.
As I said...
You're a dwarf. By a...
The horrid, but that weren't the only...
I understand. We shall return...
No skin...
The Lyrian army had grown into a great serpent. Suddenly, Neve heard angry cries and the clash of steel against... Normally disciplined, determined to an extreme,
I know you take us for savages,
began Neve, her gaze passing over several scraggy black-clads.
but fear not.
Was in Aldersburg. Other kings could... It was we... Was in Aldersburg when it...
The good mother's gat.
Long live me! Long live the Queen! Long live a liberator! All's left... Oh, damn it. All's left is...
Neve noticed one of her scouts, a certain Corporal Larkin saluted, then rode past the trees. The Scoia'tael fighters stood no chance against Neve. When the sounds of battle finally ceased, the Queen, victorious, tossed aside.
Youthful you look, Elf. How many summers?
27, my lady.
27.
I beg you, Renna.
Mercy? You jest.
It was no
Don't play me for a fool.
It's not you
Then who killed Corporal Larkin,
When we saw you on the high road, we fell back and hid in the wood. We wanted your scout's hearing very keen. He...
You know you might have...
Like Tristan's commando. Is that what you mean? They laid down their arms before an Edirnian general. If we're to die, we...
Why are you here?
Rescue someone. The Nilfgaardians have realized they'll lose the war. Demavend has loosed his hounds. They hunt our units one by one. He's offered 50. We wish to join with your Veths.
Why do you tell me?
Because you listen still. I beg you. So few of us remain.
Enough senseless killing for one. Make certain I don't...
I thank you.
Meve personally unfastened the prisoner's chains at...
Fresh eggs for sale!
Sausage! Cheese! All this must cost a veritable fortune. Where did you get the coin, good man?
It's a loan.
I cannot believe my eyes. My royal benefactor. Oh, didn't just stand there.
The Queen and Mirko shared a sumptuous dinner. They toasted his success.
First foundations hoist the wall.
Master, if only all dwarves are... If only...
It'd be an honor to fight at your side, Majesty.
The Lyrian corps neared Aldersburg. As on that day, Aldersburg was under siege.
Aha! There she is!
Mockery,
I wouldn't dare. Not my words, those. You've been... To be perfectly... For I hadn't the pluck, nor resolve.
A lesson for the...
My dear, we'll sign a truce. The Blackclads will...
I'm perfectly satisfied with them.
You're one hell of a warrior. Measures are required. Preventive.
Enough. I'll help you take Aldersburg. But...
My scouts report a small Nilfgaardian force.
Who?
I've no notion. Could be a mage. Devilishly unpredictable.
I shall see to...
Are you sure?
An understatement if I ever...
Meve set out after the Nilfgaardians immediately, a cavalry escort in tow. Her unmatched scouts, who had led the army through the mountain...
The common tongue.
I do, Your Majesty.
You also know who you deal...
Caldwin, Your Majesty.
At last. A Nilfgaardian name I can pronounce. So...
It would...
Precisely. I've spilled... Now tell me.
A letter.
Give me the letter.
I've sworn to deliver it to Jet...
Very well.
And if I refuse...
Guess.
So be it.
Meve's translator cracked the seal and read.
Truly. Caldwin. Consider this...
And that is...
That when you hand him the letter...
As Caldwin and escort set off towards Aldersburg, the Lyrian soldier... General Epdahi had prefaced Lyria's and Rivia's invasion with a series of arrogant demands. The Nilfgaardian had been impudent, as he had felt sure he'd achieve a quick and decisive victory. Yet several months on, he too received an ultimatum. One signed by Emperor Emir var Emreis himself. The missive was concise and left no room for interpretation. With General Epdahi dead, the Nilfgaardian army descended into chaos. The kings of the north, united, took advantage and struck at the foe. Their victory was complete. The Nordling forces cheered their commanders and monarchs, but for none so vehemently as the one queen among them. Many dream of achieving the impossible. Meve had done it. Through wit, determination, and boldness, she had thwarted the Nilfgaardian invasion. The queen would rule for many more years. Stern, yet ever just.
Ah! So a lass saved the North from the Blackclads?
That is one way to put it.
Well, I'll be damned. And a chap. She find herself what in the end?
Leave it be. Bloke's been spinning the tale all night. Story's done. Time we got some shut-eye.
Yes. Particularly as we've yet a long road before us.
Phew. Throat must be parched as old leather after all that. Except, I'm itching to know what happened to the lot of them. Reynard, Gascon.
Ah, very well. Whom shall we start with? Willem? He worked hard to regain his mother's trust and respect, took on many daring missions regardless of the risks. The lad who Nilfgaard had wielded as a tool now sowed terror along its borders, and appeared a successor most worthy of Meve. Meve spared no expense in bidding Gascon farewell. His peer lords themselves bore the casket, and soldiers in parade dress beat the funeral drums. The Duke of Dogs, a marauder, was interred with honors befitting the truest of royals. As news of the Nordling victory filtered south, Nilfgaard's inhabitants greeted it with disbelief. Returning Imperial soldiers told stories of Lyria's cruel queen, who murdered prisoners and sullied sacred laws. They referred to her as Gvaeldead, the bloodthirsty one. With the advent of peace, tensions waned. Lyria's and Rivia's disparate races seemed to live harmoniously, side by side. The Queen pressed for new laws aimed at curbing oppression. They were a step towards more enlightened rule, yet sadly were habitually broken. And Meve? As I said, she ruled with an iron hand, not fist. Reynard ever at her side, tempering, supportive. No longer a general and trusted advisor, he had to the Queen become something more. Much, much more. And now, if you'd allow me...
Course. Leave him be, lads. Let him get some rest. Till the time comes for the next tale.